China's equivalent to the United States Space Force, the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force, is busy preparing its space assets for a future space war. Researchers have uncovered documents that an aircraft carrier-sized UFO crashed during a 1962 atmospheric nuclear test, and efforts to salvage the UFO failed. Surging UFO sightings, over 2,000 reports in the first half of 2025. According to Representative Eric Berlinson, the upcoming congressional hearing on UFOs could mark a watershed moment in government transparency. A Pew Research Center poll gives us answers to the question of why President Donald Trump is playing dumb when it comes to the existence of extraterrestrial life and does not promote UFO disclosure. These stories and more on Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review.
You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome all to the July 19 edition of Exopolitics Today, the Week in Review. Now today, later in the afternoon, I will be doing the monthly briefing. So I'm going to try and keep this Week in Review relatively short, around the 45 minute mark. And there are a few stories that I think you will find very interesting. So I want to first begin with this story about China's equivalent to the US Space Force, which is the People's Liberation Army Aerospace Force, is busy preparing its space assets for future war. The first target would be the extensive US satellite system. So in 2001, there was a commission called the Rumsfeld Commission, named after its chairman, Donald Rumsfeld, who became the Secretary of Defense under President George Bush, where they warned about a space Pearl Harbor where US satellites would be knocked out in a surprise first strike, and recommended the creation of a Space Corps to protect the US's satellite system. So that was back in 2001 that the creation of a Space Corps was first proposed, and this was from a commission that had been convened by the Clinton administration. So it was bipartisan, but it took close to 19 years. It was only in 2019 that the US Space Force was finally created and US Space Command was reconvened. They are both in the process of integrating space assets of different military services, including elements from secret space programs. So this was something that was planned to occur in 2001. The Rumsfeld Commission, they hypothesized that there could be a space Pearl Harbor where a foreign entity like China or Russia could knock out all the US satellite system in a surprise first strike, and that would leave the US exposed because of a lot of its smart weapon systems relying on GPS and satellite telemetry. And so it was proposed that a Space Corps would be created, but it didn't happen for 18 years, and that was because the deep state didn't want it to happen, because they knew that once the Space Force was set up, that it would begin to integrate the space assets of the different military services, the Air Force's secret space program, the Navy's secret space program, and the US Army and the US Marine Corps also had elements dedicated to space service. So once you created a space force, a dedicated space force that would integrate the different military services into their operations, and that's where Space Command comes in, because Space Force is like the training and the kind of logistics of the putting out things into space. But Space Command is where all of the assets that belong to the different military services would be all integrated and kind of used for particular operations. So Space Force and Space Command are very much complementary. Space Force is in the process of integrating other elements of the secret space programs that, well, one was the Air Force's secret space program. So that's what Space Force is currently integrating. The Navy also had its secret space program, and that is not going to be integrated into the Space Force soon. But what does happen is that Space Command will use assets from the Space Force and the Navy secret space program that's called Solar Warden. So what's happening here is that China's People Liberation Army Aerospace Force is now being created. They're going down the same path of creating a dedicated aerospace force that would be able to integrate all of China's military assets in space for a future space war. Now, the thing is that China is playing catch up to the US because the US has had this secret space programs under the different military services going all the way back to the 1950s and 60s. So, but China, because of its rapid industrialization and currently it has a massive manufacturing base, is doing very well in catching up. But you can't bridge 5-6 decades in classified research in secret space programs in just a decade. It's going to take still another decade or two for if China can at all catch up. But it plans for its aerospace force to be the formal military unit in China that is going to be set up to integrate all its space assets for a potential space war, which is being planned. So this is the article that I was commenting on: China's space dogfighters and killmesh practicing to destroy US satellites and ships at sea. So this is what China is doing now. This was hypothesized back in 2001 with the Rumsfeld Space Commission, and Space Force is now set up with its primary job of protecting the US and the international satellite system to prevent any kind of space Pearl Harbor. Okay, JP shared a video with the approximate locations of oval-shaped space arcs in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean based on briefings he has received. So what I'm going to show you is, okay, so this is JP, and he's just showing the approximate area in the Atlantic Ocean here where the space arc, the Atlantic space arc, has risen. And he is saying that it is heading in a southwesterly direction, that the space arc has floated up into the atmosphere from the ocean's floor, is now in the atmosphere, that it was kind of in this mid-Atlantic region that you can see where the white dot is appearing, and it's moving in a southwesterly direction towards the Florida Keys. And so if it does come anywhere near Key West, I'll definitely take photos and let you know. We'll see if that happens. So he was talking about the Atlantic space arc moving in that direction. And then he talked about the Pacific space arc. And what JP said was that the Pacific Space Ark began its journey from somewhere in the Dragon's Triangle. I think it's also called the Devil's Triangle. Just there, kind of like south of Japan and east of China and Korea, that you have the Devil's Triangle. And so he's saying that this space ark, the Pacific Space Ark, began its journey or began moving under the ocean, that it's still under the ocean. And that was the one where he was abducted and taken into the space ark. That was, let's just say that he described 30 black-clad deep state operatives that were trying to activate the Pacific Space Ark. So they had gained access, and they had kidnapped JP and took him there because they wanted to use him to activate the space ark. And there was a Nordic extraterrestrial there as well that they were trying to use. So clearly they were trying to gain control of the space ark, but they needed people with the right genetics to do it. And they failed because JP said that he and the Nordic refused, and then the space ark helped them to escape. And he says that in this video that the bad guys are no longer there in that space ark. That the space ark was able to, I guess, remove them in some way. But still, that didn't prevent them from gaining access, and that kind of like presents the scenario that it's possible that some deep state negative people or groups can get access to advanced space technologies, and that they can try to activate them using people who submit to their intimidation. So anyway, so JP is now saying that the Pacific Space Ark has moved closer to the west coast of the United States and Canada, and so we'll find out what happens there. But certainly you get more info. You can get some more information from JP and the Space Ark locations by going to his YouTube channel. So here's a news story about researchers who uncovered documents that an aircraft carrier-sized UFO crashed during a 1962 atmospheric nuclear test, and that efforts to salvage the UFO failed, and it rose to the surface and disappeared in a flash. But nevertheless, some debris was left behind and taken away for analysis. So here's the paper. Sorry, this is the actual news story about the paper that was written by an Australian researcher, Jeff Cruikshank, and retired US Navy Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, and his wife, who was a Navy diver. And the interesting thing about this nuclear atmospheric test was that a aircraft carrier-sized UFO crashed into the Pacific, sank to the bottom, and there were salvage operations conducted by a couple of ships. And what the authors of the paper found out was the testimony of one of the divers who actually went up to the submerged UFO that had crashed, and it was about the size of an aircraft carrier, a cigar shape, and that this diver put his hand onto the side of the craft, and his hand went inside. It sunk into the metal. So definitely it's not rigid metal as we use in our technologies. It's some kind of reactive metal where it will react to external pressures or hands and so forth, or people's emotions. And what happened was that the diver kind of like panicked and had to leave. And there's a whole kind of backstory to to the diver suffering a mental breakdown after this incident. But then what was observed was that this UFO repaired itself and was able to rise up out of the ocean floor and then fly off into space. And so that shows that even though these UFOs can be affected or damaged by a nuclear weapon, that they have the capacity to repair themselves and just resume their operations. So that's quite remarkable technology. So this is a very important news story discussing this paper that had been written showing the case of this atmospheric nuclear test. Okay, here's a episode by the Y-Files, which covered the Wingmakers material and the Project Ancient Arrow. AJ, he gives a detailed overview of the Wingmakers, which is helpful for those who are new to it. It's a complex story that needs careful analysis. And what really is very interesting is that when the Wingmakers originally came out in 1998, it featured a Dr. Anderson as the whistleblower who had defected from this top secret unit called ACIO, Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, that was embedded within the National Security Agency, and that he had defected and that he was revealing all this information. And it was all put available for free, put out onto the internet for free. But then later on, what happened was that the website appeared to have been taken over. Someone called James stepped forward and said that he had created the Wingmakers material. It was all his creative imagination, just to put out information, and that now the material was being made available for sale. So it was the website was commercialized. And the names changed. Dr. Anderson now became known as Dr. Neruda. Now, I've spoken to someone, or actually I interviewed Dr. Fred Burks, who discussed this. And his view is that the original Wingmakers material was accurate, that was made available for free, that this Dr. Anderson was a genuine person who was a defector, and the information was made available through this journalist called Sarah. I can't remember if Sarah was the original name or the repackaged name, but he says that what happened was that later the Wingmakers material changed significantly in key aspects. There were significant changes made to the Wingmakers material, and that it was really misleading people from what the original intent was. Now, this is something that is covered to an extent in AJ's Y-Files episode. He discusses some of this controversy. The references to time travel and its use in national security projects is critical here, because I think that this has been happening for a long, long time, at least since the 1960s. And JP, who I've been passing updates from since been working with him since 2008, and we went public with his testimony in 2017. And he subsequently served with the US Army for 4 years, but because he got injured while doing missions related to UFOs, they gave him a full Army retirement package. So that's why he actually is legitimately retired from the army as opposed to just being a veteran. He's officially retired with a pension and so forth. Now, JP described witnessing time travel experiments into the past and the future that human scientists were being helped by extraterrestrials. So JP, one of his missions, he described going to a facility. He traveled there from Eglin Air Force Base, and at this facility there were government scientists, there were extraterrestrials, and he said that there were kind of like four time travel portals that were at that facility. One was to the year 1550, one was to 1940, one was to the year 2050, and the other one was to the year 2090, as I recall. And so this was what he witnessed and what he was allowed to reveal. And so we know from the Wingmakers material that a similar process has been happening with the Wingmakers, that they are very much involved in time travel experiments. Now, the existence of the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, that was confirmed by Daniel Morris Salter, who worked for the National Reconnaissance Office after having served for more than 20 years in the US Air Force, and he ended up as a E9, which is a command sergeant major. That's the highest rank you can receive as an NCO in the Air Force. And so he was recruited into the NRO because he had already shown his capacity to work on the UFO issue without disclosing the secret, being able to keep mum about all of that. And so that's where he worked for 20 plus years. He worked in the Air Force for 20 plus years and then worked in the NRO. I can't remember if it was a dozen years or something like that. And then he retired from that and wrote a book, Life with a Top Secret Cosmos Clearance. And his grandsons, Daniel and Derek, have been doing interviews. I think I've done 3 interviews with them so far about Daniel Morris, and absolutely the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization exists and is real. And so this takes us to the core of the Wingmakers material, which is the prospect of a future AI invasion using that the entity was this kind of like interstellar or intergalactic AI called the Animus that would come into our region of the galaxy, identify planet Earth, and invade. And so the solution to this potential AI invasion was to develop time travel technology to kind of like change past or future events so that the Animus would not find us. That was one path. And if you've watched the TV series, it's called Timeless. It's on Amazon Prime. It's all about this. It's all about going back in time to change future events. And so this is apparently what the time travel experiments are all about, trying to change the past so that the Animus, or this interstellar or intergalactic AI, does not spot the Earth and then invade the Earth. But some say it's already happening. And the other way of being able to deal with this kind of AI invasion, which for some it's actually happening right now, is that we need to upgrade human consciousness. We need to elevate our consciousness, identify or connect with our soul essence, and that will give us a means for being able to prevent the Animus from assimilating us, because the Animus cannot assimilate people who are ensouled or people who have a very strong connection to their soul or source consciousness or infinite intelligence within them. Okay, so that I think is a very important kind of idea to research. Okay, so in this particular story, what I'm commenting on is a surge in UFO sightings, that there's been over 2,000 reports in the first half of 2025. So this is a story that came out in the Gateway Pundit, and it talks about a significant increase of UFO sightings this year as opposed to previous years. So there have been 2,174 sightings of UFOs, and that's from January through June of 2025, and that's higher than the 2,000 reported in early 23, and so the speculation here, or that what the figures point to, is that there has been this surge in UFO sightings. Now, what does this mean? Well, it's, I think, very significant if you consider that there were predictions made in 2024 that extraterrestrials, inner Earth beings, and ocean-dwelling civilizations would be revealing themselves more to surface humanity. Now, official disclosure, where the government comes forward and discloses that, yes, extraterrestrials are real and they've been visiting us, or we've captured their technologies, that's pretty much on hold. I've covered that in previous week in reviews, that this is not going to be happening anytime soon, official disclosure. But that doesn't prevent organic disclosure or public disclosure, where you get private citizens having encounters, putting up videos, putting up photos, and so forth. And it doesn't prevent the extraterrestrials themselves, or beings from the inner Earth or from the bottom of the oceans, showing themselves, revealing their craft, because they know that this is important for raising public awareness and consciousness, and that's going to be very important, so that eventually, when official disclosure happens, it's going to really not be much of an announcement at all, that people will already know, because there's been so much of the organic or public disclosure happening through people putting up videos, putting up photos, and through podcasts like this one, where people are being told the truth about our inner Earth and our extraterrestrial brothers and sisters. Okay, so here's a interview I did with John Vivanko concerning giants, medbeds, AI, and ancient nuclear wars. So that's you can find that on multiple platforms, Patreon, YouTube, and Rumble. Now, what John Vivanko covered was some of the remote viewing data he did showing giants in stasis chambers, and that he's seen these red-haired giants in different parts of the world, and that these giants appear to be the gods or the titans described in ancient literature. And some of these giants were perfectly preserved. They were in some kind of stasis chamber with a unknown technology that could preserve the bodies for centuries, if not millennia. So that was very interesting. Now, here's something that I thought was very, very significant, given what I have previously published. I did an interview with Jalila Starr that came out a week ago, and she talked about medbeds possibly being used in a kind of Trojan horse scenario involving benevolent extraterrestrials, or extraterrestrials pretending to be benevolent, offering medbeds to heal humanity, and humanity would jump at the opportunity. The vast majority of humanity would go into one of these alien medbeds, and that there would be implants inserted into them or changes made, or they would be eliminated in some way, which would then allow this kind of like allegedly benevolent group of extraterrestrials, human-looking, angelic-looking even, who would take us over. And that nanotechnology is really something that is run by AI. So again, we get to this whole idea of an AI invasion, and that certain extraterrestrial organizations are fronts for this AI invasion. So that's something very, very important that we consider, that artificial intelligence may present itself as an off-world extraterrestrial visitor, but in fact is a synthetic being that uses nanotechnology, or that is being created through nanotechnology. Now, what John Vivanko discusses, though, is that there's another type of medbed, and this is one that uses frequency and light. So one of these frequency and light medbeds that does not use nanotechnology, that's actually okay for the body. And I've heard something similar from Dr. David Clements, who says that he's experienced different types of alien medbeds, and he says that it all depends on the technology of the race, that the more evolved races, they have medbeds like this kind of light and frequency chamber that a person can go into, and they can be completely healed because of the frequencies. Or you can have this kind of like AI nanotechnology medbed that actually co-ops a person, that the person that goes in is not the same as the person who comes out. So that's something to keep in mind. So very fascinating interview with John Vivanko, and I do highly recommend watching that. Okay, so I do start my weeks now by playing a humorous video, and this is going to be a Bigfoot video. It goes for 6 minutes, so I'm only going to play the first minute and a half so you get the idea of it, and it's some good humor. It's always nice to laugh. It's part of the healing process for those of us that have to pay attention to our health. And for moms and kiddies, language alert, this does use obscene words. So let's play it for you now. Okay, here we go.
Built this thing all morning. I forgot to build it by the water. So now we just have a boat in the middle of the woods. This little jerk has been taunting me all morning. He thinks just because he can climb, he owns the whole forest. It's a power trip. And this is the man cave. Got a PlayStation, it's a rock. Got a 4K TV, also a rock. Even the canyon sounds bored. This is getting sad. It's pretty, I guess. But there's gotta be more than just trees and squirrels. Gator Gitmo has laser gators? I need to go there, fucking right now.
All right, chat, the journey begins. First stop, freedom. And maybe a gas station slushie.
Whoa, heavy vibes, man. The universe told me to pick you up. Hop in. You like incense?
Chat, I think I messed up. Ugh, this doesn't look like the swamp. Holy shit, guys. It's real, and it's fucking beautiful. Smells like freedom.
Easiest job interview I've ever had. They didn't even ask about the 7-year gap in my resume.
This is a 12XL. It's the biggest we got. Try not to shed in it. It messes with the Kevlar.
Okay, all right. So you get the idea. It is very humorous. It runs for just over 6 minutes, and definitely it's good to develop that sense of humor. It'll help us deal with the malevolent interstellar AI that's trying to take over our planet. All right, so here's a post featuring some comments by House of Representative Eric Berlinson about the upcoming congressional hearing on UFOs. And he believes that it could mark a watershed moment in government transparency. For the first time, individuals who directly participated in classified UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs are expected to testify under oath. So there have been 3, maybe 4 congressional hearings on UFOs over the last 3 years. And these have featured experts and former government officials, but they have not featured whistleblowers per se. David Grush, for example, well, I guess, yes. Oh, sorry, I need to back up there. They featured whistleblowers like David Grush and Luis Elizondo, but they were revealing what they had been told or what they had seen in documents. They themselves did not directly participate in classified UFO crash retrieval and reverse engineering programs. A recent whistleblower who did participate in one of these crash retrieval operations is Jake Barber. And so hopefully he will be one of the people that appear before Congress in this upcoming hearing, and that will really push the disclosure process forward. Okay, so what Congressman Berlinson goes on to say is that these are not secondhand witnesses or sharing stories that someone told them. People like David Grush and Luis Elizondo have been sharing what others have told them. These are individuals who reportedly operated recovery vehicles, whistleblowers like Jake Barber, handled non-human craft and came into contact with biological specimens of other intelligent forms of life. If multiple such individuals come forward with consistent, detailed testimony backed by clearance-level experience and technical knowledge, it would be nearly impossible to dismiss the claims as fabrication or misinterpretation. So what's being said here, if you have people coming forward like Jake Barber, who was a helicopter pilot and had that level of skill and says that he was involved in crash retrieval operations where he would airlift UFO debris from one location to another, that would be, according to Congressman Berlinson, nearly impossible to dismiss. Media outlets which previously hesitated to fully investigate the topic will be compelled to take the hearing seriously. Even the absence of physical evidence, coordinated first-hand accounts from insiders would shatter the long-standing fallback that there is no evidence. Okay, so this is really just a summary of what Eric Berlinson believes is going to happen with this upcoming hearing, which is going to be held by a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee sometime in the next few months. We don't know the exact date. It's already been postponed a couple of times, but definitely it would move the disclosure process forward if this were to happen. All right, so here is what I thought was a good overview of the Boogosphere UFO, and here's some original footage of the Boogosphere UFO that was witnessed in Colombia, and it is being researched by people like Jaime Mousson, and it is quite remarkable when you look at the video of it, that that little device was recovered. When they recovered it, it was said that it only weighed 2 kilograms, but after a period of time, its weight increased, suggesting that there was some kind of anti-gravity technology involved in this. Apparently, it hit telephone lines or power transmission lines. Power transmission lines, and it fell to the ground. And here you can see it being recovered. And now the big question here is, well, is this an extraterrestrial technology? Now, in my view, there is no way in the world the deep state would allow genuinely extraterrestrial technology to fall into the hands of civilians and kind of like released to the public in this way. So my view is that this is probably some corporate build technology, and the fact that it was videotaped and allowed to fall into the hands of civilian researchers suggests to me that it's probably part of some disclosure initiative by some group. So yeah, it's a fascinating case. And Jaime Muson from Mexico is kind of like one of the leaders of the investigation into the Boogosphere, and there it is. Okay, so here's a Pew Research Center poll that helps us get an answer to why President Donald Trump is playing dumb when it comes to the existence of extraterrestrial life, and does not give any tangible support to congressional efforts to promote UFO disclosure. Now, here's the Pew Research Study, and it shows the level of white evangelical Christian support for Trump. And you can see from this chart here, as far as people approving of Trump's handling of his job as president, if you divide them up, if you divide his support base up into religious or non-religious affiliated groups and whites and blacks, Catholics and so forth, that the overwhelming majority are white evangelical Christians, and that 72%, and previously that was 78%, of white evangelicals approve of the job Trump is doing as president. And when you consider that there are approximately 80 million evangelical Christians in the United States, if roughly 3/4 of them, let's just say 75% of them support Donald Trump, that's kind of like anywhere between 55 to 60 million people that support Trump and the MAGA movement. Now, why is that significant? Well, if we are looking at the prospects of UFO disclosure and revealing the existence of extraterrestrial life, then the attitudes of Trump's core constituency is going to become very relevant. Now, we've been told by Professor Haim Eshed in 2020 and David Grush in 2025 that Trump has been briefed and is even working with human-looking aliens. So think about that for a moment. Trump is working with human-looking aliens. He's met them. He's been briefed about them. There's maybe even agreements have been reached. So why doesn't he support UFO and extraterrestrial disclosure? Well, the problem here is that the Pew Research Study shows us that his by far biggest support base are these white evangelical Christians, and as I said, somewhere in the vicinity of 55 to 60 million support Trump. Now, Trump won 77 million votes in 2025, and so that tells you straight away why it is that making sure these evangelical Christians are on your side and supporting you is critical for Trump's legacy and his future continued popularity. So this poll really does reveal that Trump is dependent on these white evangelicals to maintain his support base and his future legacy. So now we reach the crux of the problem, and that is when it comes to UFO extraterrestrial disclosure, a majority of evangelical Christians believe that UFOs and extraterrestrials are fallen angels or demonic in nature, and that they're involved in abductions. Most of the Christian researchers, UFO researchers that I've come across, focus on the abduction phenomena and conclude from that extraterrestrials are deceptive and evil. Very, very few actually study positive extraterrestrials, in addition to the negative. I mean, among those, I think Timothy Alberino is one who does look at both positive and negative extraterrestrials, so kudos to him. But he's in a minority when it comes to evangelical Christians. And so that raises the question, well, how many of these evangelical Christians would desert Trump if they believe that he's colluding or working with fallen angels or demons? And this is no stretch, because there's books by popular evangelicals such as Thomas Horn, Steve Quayle, Chris Putnam, Chuck Meisler, that all describe the deceptive nature of extraterrestrials and how humanity may have to fight an end times war against fallen angels, the Antichrist, and their foolish human supporters, as prophesied in the book of Revelation. So I think that what has probably happened and why Trump is doing nothing to promote the UFO extraterrestrial disclosure process is because he thinks it's too risky for his administration to move forward, and he's either going to wait for attitudes to change or allow someone else to take the reins of the disclosure. And that would be, say, someone like Pope Leo XIV, who would actually lead the Vatican. And that the Vatican actually, to its credit, has been playing a significant role since around 2008 in educating the over 1.5 billion Catholics around the world that extraterrestrials are our brothers, that the Catholic Church doesn't teach its people about extraterrestrials being evil and negative and so forth. So that's a very big difference between Catholics and evangelical Christians. But Trump is beholden to the white evangelical tradition, whereas his vice president, J.D. Vance, actually is a Catholic. And so I could imagine someone like Vance working with the Pope to move forward with a UFO disclosure, whereas if Trump did it, then he would lose his evangelical Christian support base. But certainly I don't think Vance could do this on his own. So definitely we do get an understanding of what's going on. Okay, so here is the video version, or here's the YouTube and Rumble version of a interview I did with Erica Amarina, where she describes her lifelong experiences as first a abductee, where she was taken by grey extraterrestrials and used in their genetic experiments. And she said that from the very early phase, going as far back as when she was 1.5, she remembers the military being involved in this, that somehow at a very young age, the military, with the help of these grey extraterrestrials, had identified her, and especially her soul essence, as a person that they could use in their programs. Because I mentioned the space arcs and how the bad guys need to use the genetics of people with the right frequency and consciousness to be able to access ancient technologies. This is something that the deep state has been doing for a long time, identifying soul, identifying star seeds, identifying people who have an extraterrestrial heritage, who have incarnated on planet Earth, and try to identify and recruit them for their operations. So that happened to Erica very early on in her life, and it continued throughout her life, where she was subjected to a lot of horrific abuses. I mean, now listening to Erica and reading her book was kind of similar to when I read Kathy O'Brien's Transformation of America. That was a very, very hard book to read. I haven't interviewed Kathy O'Brien because she really didn't talk very much about extraterrestrials, and so I feel that's important for me to be able to maintain my YouTube channel, is to focus on the extraterrestrial stuff, because that's still regarded as fringe, and you won't get your channel taken down if you start. But if you start talking about these military abductions involving senior politicians, abusing females in all these ways, then it's tough to keep your channel that way. But anyway, Erica's story is a difficult one to read and absorb, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, because later on, just in the last, I think, 2 years, really, Erica was able to free herself of the great abductions, that she finally connected with her soul family, that she had reached the point of suicide, and she was about to attempt suicide when, lo and behold, her soul family appeared. And it's like, well, you go from a lifetime of abuse and, okay, I'm going to end my life now, can't take it anymore. And she's suffering all sorts of medical problems, and now she gets taken up on the ship, and she sees her star family, and they're like, were you really going to commit suicide? And it's like, oh, well, is it that bad down there? And so anyway, so she, it was kind of like her being able to connect with her soul family has turned things around, and now she understands her mission, that she volunteered for this mission, volunteered to go through all of these negative experiences, because as a very powerful soul, she understood the importance of knowing exactly what it is that the deep state and the black hats are doing. So she also has discovered that she's a galactic envoy. So she is one of the people that has chosen to incarnate on Earth with her significant other, incarnated in the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So I've previously interviewed and talked about Dr. Andrea Martin, and Erica Amarina also works with Dr. Martin. And there's a third person that I'll be interviewing soon, and I'll be presenting her information to you shortly. But right now, Erica's story is definitely worth listening to. So you can, the interview just goes for 1 hour and 3/4. Okay, I'll talk more about the monthly live briefing very, very soon. Okay, so here is something, it's a interview that Kerry Cassidy did with Nino Rodriguez, who I guess you would consider to be part of the MAGA movement, or Make America Great Again movement, a fervent Trump supporter, and also part of that kind of like a Christian evangelical movement. And it was very telling, as Kerry Cassidy is being interviewed by Nino Rodriguez, that and she was admonishing the leaders of the MAGA movement who were lying or not revealing the full truth when it came to controversial topics like Jeffrey Epstein, extraterrestrial life, galactic slave trade, and so forth, that this was not something that they were prepared to listen to. They did not kind of like interested in hearing about this. And MAGA advocates such as President Trump, 1 or 7, they, as I mentioned earlier, with evangelical Christians that they are constantly pandering to the Christian patriot community. They express themselves in ways so that they can get the full support and don't estrange themselves from evangelical Christians who make up about 80 million of the US population. So if you look at the MAGA movement, a large percentage of that comprises evangelical Christians, not all. I'm sure that there are secular supporters of the MAGA movement, many millions of those. But if you kind of like look at the numbers here, if there are 80 million evangelical Christians, and the majority of those are part of the MAGA movement supporting President Trump, and you look at the number of star seeds on planet Earth, it's been estimated there's about 200 million star seeds on planet Earth, which is about 2.5% of the population. Well, 2.5% of the American population comes up to around 7 million people, 8 million people. Okay, and how many of those 8 million star seeds are awake in the United States? Half? 20%? A lot of them are still probably asleep, but they're probably interested in Star Trek and so forth, but that's about as far as it goes. But nevertheless, you're probably talking anywhere from 1 to 7 million people are star seeds who are interested in extraterrestrial life and want to find out about it. And then you got 80 million people. The majority are Christian patriots, and for them, extraterrestrials are demons or fallen angels or associated with the Antichrist in an end times war. So I think it really it's very difficult to get through to that community. If you want to talk about extraterrestrials, I think it is a very big ask. And Kerry was talking about the importance of embracing one's own starseed origins, being an alien hybrid, being an expression of infinite source intelligence, in order to be a courageous truth teller. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think many of you watching this probably agree with that too, because I think that this is exactly what starseeds would identify as being true. That, yeah, I'm an extraterrestrial in terms of my soul essence. I've had many lives on other worlds. My genetics are part of an alien hybrid cocktail, and that totally I'm an expression of infinite source intelligence and the Kundalini rising and awakening, or connecting with the infinite center, the infinite heart center is all part of your kind of awakening process. Now that is very foreign to, or actually dismissed by Christian patriots as part of the kind of New Age movement, if you like, and so when it comes to ET disclosure, most of the proponents of the MAGA movement, like many of the proponents, like Trump, 107, etc., they remain silent, and because they know most evangelicals regard ETs as demons and fallen angels, and so they're not going to. These evangelical Christians aren't going to support anyone advocating cooperation or dialogue with the extraterrestrials. So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place here, because if you're someone like 107, President Trump, and you want to free America of the deep state, you want to make sure that your level of support stays strong, so that way nothing bad can happen to your administration or key figures, and that means keeping evangelical Christians on board. But most of them don't want to know about extraterrestrial disclosure. That they consider that to be the realm of demons and fallen angels. And those that do care about extraterrestrial disclosure, the starseeds, we're still a small population, and not all are awake. So Kerry Cassidy has been left on the margins of the MAGA movement, except for a few people like Nino Rodriguez and Michael Jaco, who do give her a platform for interviews occasionally. All right, now here we have something that I felt really is needs to be pointed out again and again. So let me first play this video clip where you have Ross Coulthart talking about stealth technologies.
Go ahead.
Well, but behind all, I think there's two issues. One is there's a genuine fear inside the national security establishment that they've been caught with their pants down and they don't want the US public to know about this. I'm told this is another 9/11, that in the event of a conflict, we would be wrong-footed because our enemies have drone technology that could blow us out of the water. Every plane, every base could be destroyed with a selective drone that can get in by stealth without being tracked, instantaneously to explode. We could destroy pretty much the national security or infrastructure of the United States instantaneously in any conflict. And this is the implications of this new type of stealth drone technology. This is the bubble, the secret that's bubbling away behind the scenes.
All right, so there you have this perspective that Ross Coulthart is putting out, and also is being echoed by this Disclosure Party Twitter channel that says that essentially foreign adversaries are running laps around the US government with advanced stealth drones, and national security officials believe it's and kind of like being critical of national security officials who believe that it's a good idea to keep recovered UFO technology in a failed reverse engineering program that hasn't produced results in 80 years. And so it asks, why are we hoarding world-changing technology in understaffed secret space programs instead of maximizing the potential impact through open scientific collaboration and private innovation? So what they're saying here is that advanced stealth drone technology is something that China and Russia are leading the way because of their kind of advanced scientific advances. And in the US, kind of similar stealth technology has not been developed for 80 years because of this failed reverse engineering. That is complete bullshit. I mean, that is just nonsense. These guys don't know. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, these people, they have big channels, big followings, but they have no clue. This is so far from the truth. Ross Coulthart, people who have that kind of level of public exposure, that they are echoing this idea that reverse engineering of captured UFO technologies over the last 80 years has been a complete failure. Well, that all began in 1988, that kind of perception or that narrative emerged in 1988. And when Bob Lazar first came forward saying that, well, you know, I was at S4, there were these 9 flying saucers there, and they were trying to reverse engineer them, and they brought me in because they got stuck. The previous guy got killed because he activated something when he shouldn't have, and so forth and so forth. But that's a real mess, and they haven't reverse engineered anything. And from what I saw, they're not going to succeed at all. So this is something that Bob Lazar first revealed in his interviews, and George Knapp has been echoing that ever since. And more recently, he's been assisted by Jeremy Corbell, putting out pretty much the same thing. This misconception was reconfirmed or reaffirmed by Vice Admiral Thomas Wilson's effort to learn about a corporate UFO reverse engineering program, first in 1997 when he was briefed by Stephen Greer and the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and then in 2002 in a letter that was leaked, or a document that was released, that was a summary of a conversation he had with Dr. Eric Davis, and where he was essentially told that, there's captured UFO technology that a corporation has been studying, but the reverse engineering has failed. And more recently, this misconception was propagated by David Garash in 2023 when summarizing what he had learned as a liaison to the UAP task force. So because of these different sources that are widely accepted as credible, and you can take their testimony to the bank, yes, recovered craft have been retrieved, but corporations have some of the craft materials and have been studying these to reverse engineer them for close to 80 years, but they've failed. The technology is too advanced. Well, that is just total BS. I mean, it's like I've written a 7-volume book series, a secret space program book series, and then I did a follow-up, a 3-volume series, U.S. Army Insider Missions, and all 10 of those books detail the extent to which secret space programs have been successfully developed in the United States and other countries as well. And there's a wide international cooperation in these secret space programs. And so reverse engineering of fleets of anti-gravity craft and reverse engineering has succeeded, and what's being produced are fleets of anti-gravity craft, big motherships, kind of space carrier ships. Advanced stealth technology have also been built and deployed. I mean, they can have a craft hovering above a person's home, and the stealth technology is such that you wouldn't see it. It is so good. So why do many UFO researchers propagate the failed UFO reverse engineering narrative? Why do some want us to believe that the US is under a national security threat from peer nations that have mastered stealth drone technologies, while assuming that the US has developed nothing that is comparable? Well, I think it's the simplest answer is that people like Ross Coulthart, George Knapp, Jeremy Corbell, and Bob Lazar have all bought into this limited hangout that, yes, UFO craft have been retrieved, corporations have them, or scientific institutions have them, but these have not been successfully reverse engineered. Whereas we know from many other whistleblowers, and you've got to give credit where credit is due, and I give all credit here to Dr. Stephen Greer, because he was the first one, to my mind, that really made it clear that there was a secret space program that had been developed as a result of successful reverse engineering. He's interviewed hundreds of whistleblowers. But why is it that these people, whether it's George Knapp, whether it is Jeremy Corbell, Ross Coulthart, why do they dismiss what Stephen Greer has been putting out since the 1990s? And certainly in my book series, my 7-volume book series, I've cited many whistleblowers, many leaked documents, all pointing to the existence of successful reverse engineering of captured extraterrestrial craft. But none of that is cited. None of that is acknowledged. Instead, they go for this kind of limited hangout that I just explained. All right, here is a interview I did with Laura Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And here she talks about the awakening of the Guardians and the role of the returned Anunnaki. So this is currently available on Patreon. So you get early access. It was made available Friday morning. So you get early access throughout this weekend. And on Monday, it'll become available on YouTube and Rumble. So you can wait for the YouTube Rumble versions and get to watch those with ads, or you could get to become a Patreon supporter and just pay $7 a month. And for that $7 a month, you get 3 videos a week. You get early access to those videos. You get also ad-free, and you get to have the satisfaction of supporting me and my work. I can't put out 3 videos a week interviewing different people, doing these week-in reviews for nothing. And the way to support me is to just become a subscriber, pay $7 a month, and you are supporting this channel. And I thank all of you who have become Patreon subscribers. Your membership really does make a difference. So with this interview with Laura Eisenhower, we talk about what to do about the returned Anunnaki. Is this something that we need to welcome? Is this something that we need to be kind of fearful of in some way? Okay, so now Laura, she began her journey in terms of this exopolitical topic in 2006 when she was approached by a group wanting to recruit her to go to Mars. And eventually she learned that the Mars project was headed by Dr. Hal Puthoff, who's very, very familiar with exotic propulsion technologies, used to ferry personnel and supplies to Mars. And this helps explain his familiarity with of more than 10 UFO crash retrieval operations in the US and a similar number worldwide that he confirmed in an interview with Joe Rogan. Okay, so this is where we get into a contentious area, a very contentious area, because she discussed the role of the Anunnaki in genetically altering humanity, effectively dumbing down our ancient ancestors who possessed 12-strand DNA after the Anunnaki arrived approximately 300,000 years ago. And she describes how ancient practitioners of the Mother Goddess religions were defeated by the Anunnaki forces led by Enki, Ea, and were assimilated into the patriarchal belief systems dominated by the male sky gods Anu, Enki, Marduk, and Enlil. Now, when I was teaching international peace and conflict resolution at American University, I came across the research of Joseph Campbell, and he talked about something like this happening where hundreds of thousands of years ago, there were these mother goddess religions all over the world where the mother was worshipped, where the earth mother was worshipped. And these were matriarchal societies, and that had gone on for millennia. And that the religions all were focused on worship of the Earth Mother. And then 300,000 years ago, or at some time, these warlike sky gods arrived, these male sky gods arrived, and they defeated the forces of the Mother Goddess religions and established patriarchal religious systems. And they were and that these forces were led by Enki or Ea and Marduk. You actually can read about this in the Enuma Elish, because in the Enuma Elish it describes this ancient war between the forces led by Enki and Marduk. That Marduk was the warrior god that was appointed, and he was the son of Enki, and he was appointed to kind of like lead this war against the forces of Tiamat and Apsu, who represented the primordial mother goddess religion, and that the Anunnaki defeated the mother goddess supporters in battle, and that's when you get the establishment of the Anunnaki as the dominant extraterrestrial species on Earth, and eventually creating a slave race where you have Enki or Ea in his laboratory with his, I guess, half-sister Ninhursag, and they created humans, modern humans, or at least the avatar body for that we have. And of course, the soul is infinite, but the body was created by the Anunnaki according to the Sumerian texts and those who interpret it. Now, this is where we get into the crux of the debate. Was this genetic engineering of this avatar body something that kind of like upgraded primitive hominids, ape-like beings with minimal intelligence, and so Enki and Ninhursag infused those primates or those hominids with Anunnaki DNA, upgrading them and eventually building Homo sapiens? Or was it that what the Anunnaki did was they dumbed down this 12-stranded humans who were associated with the previous mother goddess religions that was highly empathic, highly telepathic, where they could embrace the diversity of life on Earth and connect with the planet herself, that the 12-strand DNA was something that would allow the humans before the Anunnaki to connect with the planet herself. So that's what Laura believes is the case. And I think there's a lot of merit to that. And in here, in the interview, I share a story from my wife, Angelica, who remembers actually being a geneticist prior to the arrival of the Anunnaki. And she shares a unique perspective on what the Anunnaki did. So that's in the interview. And I do plan to one day have Angelica come on to Exopolitics Today, where she can talk about that and many other things that she knows about the extraterrestrial life. Okay, so what Laura Eisenhower says is that the return of Enki or Ea opens up yet another chapter in the good cop, bad cop dynamic played by the Anunnaki in deceiving and manipulating humanity through the ages using genetic engineering and other advanced technologies. And I totally agree with her. Now, I personally think that Enki or Ea is a very positive, benevolent being. I think he is truly an immortal and that he has incredible knowledge. But I certainly don't think he's someone that humanity should worship, and there should certainly not be a cult established around him. And I think that this is very likely part of a good cop, bad cop routine, and Enki is the good cop, and Enlil at this point is playing the bad cop and supposedly imprisoned somewhere in the Anak Empire, serving time for dastardly deeds done against humanity in the past. That Enki is here to redeem the Anunnaki or the Anak Empire, redeem them for the travesties that happened under his half-brother Enlil, or Hugh, as is also known. Now, here is something that I think is also very important that Laura brings to the table here in her own research, is that she believes that rather than relying on extraterrestrial saviors or their representatives, awakened humans need to reconnect with their own internal divine source, thereby becoming guardians, human angels that can help the rest of humanity steer the right path between the Skyla and Charybdis of extraterrestrial contact. So this is very similar to what I talked about earlier regarding Kerry Cassidy and how she's been kind of like pushed to the side in the Make America Great Again movement because she doesn't like go down the Christian patriot route, which is giving your power away, because this is one of the defining aspects of Christianity, that it's all about giving your power away to the church, to the Pope, and seeing them as the kind of like embodiments of Christ energies on planet Earth, rather than connecting with that higher consciousness within yourself. And so according to Laura, we have the capacity, if we make that connection, of becoming guardians or human angels that can help the rest of humanity steer the right pathway between the Skyla and Charybdis of extraterrestrial contact. And I totally agree with that. I think it's also the work of other researchers such as Lisa Renee, who talks a lot about this. Ashanaya Dean also talks about this, but I've never been very, let's just say I don't really resonate that much with Ashanaya Dean, but I do resonate more with Lisa Renee. So I do plan to approach her and do an interview with her in the future to just to better understand this idea of guardians and human angels and how we can step into that role. Okay, so now what I want to do is talk about the the monthly briefing that is going to be held later today. So with the monthly briefing, if you bring up the banner, Jazz, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. So with the monthly briefing, we are going to be talking about a number of topics. This month, I'm going to be looking at the top 7 stories for over the last 4 to 6 weeks concerning exopolitics. So there's been quite some developments there. I'm going to be looking at the significance of the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, as President Trump now claims it. Now, why would he be claiming that the Epstein files is part of an elaborate hoax? Well, there's an extraterrestrial, or more precisely, a kind of UFO connection to all this. And so in the month in review, I will be talking about the Epstein files and their connection to the UFO issue. I'll be also talking about the Galactic Envoy program. There's more envoys that are coming forward. I mentioned Erica Amarina as another envoy that's come forward. Medbeds. I mean, how do we understand medbeds? As I mentioned earlier, a little bit from the information from John Vivanko, that medbeds, there is a positive type of medbed that also is in existence. I'll be talking about the medbeds, and so this will be held today, Saturday, July 19 at 5 o'clock East Coast time, which is 2 o'clock Pacific time, and that will be 9 o'clock p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So that's it for today's Week in Review. Thank you for watching, and thank you for your support. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.